gas. So this video is for anyone that owns an older Harbor Freight Blackmax 4,550 watt generator and it's reached the end of its life and it's ready to get decommissioned. Most of these generators can be found cheap secondhand and come with a 7 horsepower 208cc Chinese Honda clone style engine that appear to be a good candidate for a go-kart or mini bike project. I'm saying 7 horsepower in air quotes because I don't quite understand how a 208cc engine is 7 horsepower, but a 212cc Predator engine is 6.5. Anyways, moving on. The problem with this generator is it doesn't come with a Predator 212 style engine and it can get a little confusing, but I'm confident I did all the hard work for you guys so you don't have to. The engine in this model generator is made by Ducar and has a part number of DJ170F. You'll find a variation of that number engraved somewhere on the engine block. It's a 70mm bore with a 54mm stroke crank, giving it the advertised 208cc displacement. To be a little more specific, it's a 207.82cc engine. For comparison's sake, a Predator 212 is the same bore but has a 55mm stroke crank, equating to the 211.67 cc's of displacement. For those familiar with the 196cc Coleman engines, those have a 68mm bore and a 54mm stroke crank, making it 196.11 cc's, cloning the Honda GX200 series engines. And if it had a 55mm crank, it'd make it 199.74 cc, usually advertised as a 200cc engine. So I've had this generator for more than half a decade, and the generator portion has reached the end of its life. I installed a new carburetor and cranked it up to verify the engine still ran strong and didn't burn oil. To my favor, the engine ran and idles great and revs strong. Now let's get this engine out. During disassembly, you'll come across the generator's coil held in by a long bolt that is attached to the engine's output shaft, also called the power takeoff or PTO. Upon further inspection of the engine, I realized this engine does not have a traditional crankcase side cover. The side cover is actually a generator-specific one and would not be ideal for a kart or mini bike project. Sometimes you'll find that some small engines, for example on a pressure washer, the water pump is attached to the engine's side cover like a traditional 30 series torque converter instead of doubling as a side cover like this generator. The side cover you'd need to buy is one from a Honda GX200. The end of the camshaft is a smaller diameter than the non-Hemi 212 cam and would flop around if I installed on a traditional non-Hemi side cover. I'd assume the Hemi side cover could work. I'd also like to note when I tried an OEM non-Hemi 212 cam, it would not fit in the engine. Alright, we got the thing open. The next issue, as expected, this engine did come with a non-keyed tapered shaft. I've grinded oddball shafts down to 3/4 in the past with good results, but considering Honda clone cranks are readily available for cheap, I'd opt to simply buying the correct crank for this engine. The crankshaft I took a gamble on is the Honda GX200 crank. It has the same 54mm stroke as the Ducar and has the same crankshaft crank pin outer diameter of 29.98mm or 1.180 inches. The Predator 212 rod will not fit this crank pin and is about 8 thousandths larger in size difference, so if used, it'd flop around on the crank until catastrophic failure. Alright, update on the 208cc Ducar generator engine. I took out the tapered shaft crank. This would be the output shaft. So it's a tapered shaft. Doesn't even have a key in it. Can't do anything with it. But yeah, it fit in the engine perfectly. The only thing I'm missing is the front case cover. Took out the governor, sealed it up, took off the oil sensor, sealed it up. This thing should be ready to go as soon as I get my cam cover, which should arrive today. Hopefully it fits. Also comes with a new gasket. Look what I got in the mail. The side cover for the generator motor to replace that weird looking thing. Hopefully this fits. And it came with gaskets, even a head gasket. I didn't know. That's nice. Alright, this is the moment of truth. This is what wouldn't fit. Alright. Oh, perfect. That's what I was worried about. And now will it fit on here? Would you look at that? Perfect. So what I'll do, clean it, purple power, and I'll spray paint it black. Cast aluminum flywheel, 18-pound Honda valve springs, no governor. You know, you got a good 50 to 60 mile an hour motor. That's a generator motor. Well, here is the generator motor with the proper shaft. Side cover is tapped and vented with a barb. Same thing with the valve cover. Now I just gotta wait for that seal that goes in there. And gotta get the exhaust. I have an extra exhaust at home, another pipe I could throw on there. And then throw a carburetor on there. Probably one of those push-pull style carburetors that I always use. Now for the head, I'm going with 18-pound valve springs to take advantage of the fact that I removed the governor, and I'm also going with a cast 1.3 ratio rockers to give a little more power to that factory cam in there. In addition, I'm also using the appropriate pushrod guide plate. Now while I prefer the automotive style keepers and the 2 retainers per valve, I decided I'm just going to use the slip-on retainers for this guy. To hold the valves up during the spring change process, I removed the spark plug, I threw down some rope into the spark plug hole, then I rotated the crank, and I pinched the piston up against the rope, pinching the valves up, preventing them from falling down. It's what I'm used to doing, it works every time. If you deal with these slip-on style retainers that don't have the keepers, you'll always see that the lash cap is only on the exhaust side, so don't think you lost any pieces. Now that that's done, I'm going to install the push rod guide plate, the 1.3 rockers, and then set the appropriate lash. At this point, I've already installed a carburetor, and I'm lapping the flywheel onto the shaft. I just use some valve grinding compound, install the flywheel without the key, and I give it a good spin so that way I get both metal surfaces mated to the flywheel. I also installed the ignition coil and set the proper gap. Everything looks, feels, and sounds good. Before reinstalling the side cover, I used a brand new side cover gasket, and while I was at it, I installed a brand new PTO crank seal. I installed a center exit exhaust header. I have an 18-tooth clutch, which should give me some nice top speed. I think I would consider this guy done. I have a magnetic oil drain plug to catch any metal particulates during the break-in period, and it's also just a smart thing to have in general. Now after all the work I put into this engine, I brought it outside, filled it with oil, hooked up some gas lines, and I'm ready to fire it up.